Hello and welcome to SodiusWillert's Introduction to OSLC Connect for Confluence. I'm Robert Belarja and I'm here to introduce our exciting new product. So here simply we have just a basic page within Confluence. You can think of any pages that you use. You can use the OSLC Connect for Confluence capability. But to give you a sense of what we're trying to do and how we envision people using this, the types of things that we know our teams are using are things they're creating meeting minutes where they might want to reference some design elements. They're going to be creating some reviews, so they might have some Git reviews or project reviews, where they need to share some documentation, engineering data, test results, or something like this. This is Project Navigator, basically providing the entry point for all the teams to be able to know where to be able to go find documents, what are the interesting, important things for them to look at, and obviously we'd like to have them to have current, up-to-date information to be able to go take a look. So initially, if we look at this, traditionally in Confluence, the way we would do this would be simply to add links. So we can add a link off to DOORS Next. If somebody actually wanted to be able to go access that information, they would actually have to navigate over to that. You saw that I opened a tab in the background. I'd have a tab, I'd go navigate into DOORS Next to be able to find that information. The same would be true for something like Jira or Engineering Test Manager, all those same activities. What we want to do is make this experience more dynamic. So instead of just navigating over to those tools, what we want to be able to do is provide OSLC links. And OSLC links are live links. So something like this is actually a key document specification that I have within DOORS Next. You can be able to see that just simply by rich hovering over this, I get an overview of the information that's contained in there. So I can see description, who owns it, what the hierarchy of that document is. I can see information dynamically without actually navigating to the tool. The same goes through to other documentation. So I might have some testing plans or testing results that I need to take a look at. I can go ahead and just be able to rich preview, access that information, see more information if I so desire. And if I want to, I can go ahead and click on this to be able to navigate over to it. And it's going to bring me directly to that artifact. And so it's a great way for people to be able to go see elements and information they need, and then navigate over to that tool if they necessarily need to be able to make updates. And the same is true as we look into things like a risk element that we have within Engineering Workflow Manager, or what was previously called RTC, Rational Team Concert. The same is true with another tool. So I have Jira in here as well, using those same OSLC links. You're going to see that dynamic rich preview that I can get just by hovering over that artifact and see that. So same interface, same OSLC interface, different tools. We can access the information of those different repositories without ever leaving the confines of Confluence. So it's a great place to be able to share information without people leaving the context in which they're in. To be able to show you a little bit more about how dynamic this information is, if I open up this this Engineering Workflow Management artifact in another window here, you can see me be able to make some small changes, and so I can maybe make an update of the description. Maybe let's update the description. We can be able to change the probability. We might be able to make that high. We might be able to say that the priority of this, maybe it's, for some reason, we're going to change it to medium. And once we save that artifact, what's going to be interesting is as I'm in Confluence and as I do this rich hover again, you're going to be able to see that I have my updated description, I have my probability changed, I have my priority changed. What's happening is whenever I do that rich hover, it's dynamically pulling that information to me. So I'm going to be able to see that information up to date. So anybody looking at this Confluence page is always going to get up-to-date information readily accessible to them, so they know the information they need to have. And that becomes even more important as we look at something like global configuration. So those of you who've used the IBM tools know there's a concept of global configuration. Basically think about this as being versioning of artifacts. And you'll see a little header up here at the top that indicates which configuration we're operating in. What that means is which versions of those artifacts that I'm looking at. Me as a reader of this page, I can do some temporary changes, switch to a different configuration. And when I do a switch to a different configuration, you'll see that the versions of those artifacts change. So if you look down at the key document reference here, when I make the switch, it's going to show me a previous version of that document. And so you'll see that the title changed, some of the contents have changed, and so it allows me to be able to indicate which version of those artifacts. And in fact, if we look back in our testing status, you're going to see that these are actually unresolved links, meaning that those test plans didn't exist yet in that previous version. It wasn't until we moved over to version 2 that those documents actually existed. So it's a great way for us to be able to keep that information and be able to automatically switch that. And as you saw in the switch dialog, this page configuration, this is a configuration that the editor of the page stores with the page itself. So as you need to change configuration, the page owner can change those things and be able to store those in the history of the Confluence page, so you always know which configuration you should be using. Now, that kind of gives you a sense of what it feels like as you as an interactor with the page. So someone who comes to the page sees what content's there. Now, if I actually am an editor of the page, it's interesting to take a look at how easy it is for me to be able to add content to this page. So if I just go to my normal editor for my Confluence page, you'll be able to see where I actually have these different links in. So if I take a look, I want to maybe add another OSLC link here, I can. In fact, I can go through here and say, okay, I want to add another, maybe a requirement specification. So I'm going to pick my DOORS Next project. I'm going to be able to link to, let's just do an existing specification, and I'm going to get my dialog from DOORS Next. It makes a great way for me to be able to go and find the artifacts that I'm looking for. Maybe I want to put my hazard and risk document in here. I can go ahead and do that, and then it's going to add a link to my hazard and risk document. Now, a couple other things to keep in mind here. As we look at this, we can preview this at any point. So see what it looks like within our document. It's just going to look like a link here, and then I can do a rich hover and see the contents of that. But I have other options here as well. I can also go ahead and I want to display this link maybe as a small preview. That means it's going to be an automatically expanded viewpoint on my page. It'll be something that will grab people's attention so they can already see it. They don't have to rich hover to go find the details. So I do have those options to be able to configure how I want to present that on my Confluence page. And that's as if I'm adding some documents I want people to be able to look at. The same applies to when I'm adding some test artifacts as well. But one of the other scenarios that we have is not only can we link to existing artifacts, but we also can create new artifacts. So one of the common situations is I'm running a meeting minutes, I have some action items that I want to be able to track. So I might be keeping meeting minutes right in Confluence. A great way to keep track of those action items is actually to create them directly from Confluence. So in this case, if I want to create a new link, I can create a link to, let's do our change management tool. Let's pick EWM this time as my container. And I want to create a new item. So let's create a new task. So the nice thing about this is I've created this, I'm told it where I want to create it, what type of artifact. It's going to actually get a delegated dialog from EWM. So it'll look exactly like EWM because it is EWM. So I can create a new action item. I can create a new item here and be able to even set a date if I want. So you see I have all my pickers and dialogues that I normally have within this interface. Add description. And I can go ahead and create that element. So what's happened here is I've actually created an element in EWM directly as I'm in Confluence editing a page. If I looked at this, I could see the preview of this. I have that artifact. I'm getting the rich preview already from within EWM. So it is creating that in the foreign tool, but then dynamically pulling this information back for me. So it's a great way for me to keep track of action items in my document. And then when I update this, what's going to happen is we're going to see that expanded viewpoint that we had earlier for my risk document, so you can see how that presents itself. And then you'll see that within my table, I've just added a new artifact, that RTC or EWM artifact in there. So it gives you a good sense in terms of how we might interact with this. And that's kind of the 2 points of view from the perspective of someone who's visiting a page, as well as someone who is actually simply editing a page. The other point of view is that we know that this is going to be present in engineering enterprise. And part of that means that we have lots of repositories, lots of connections. We want to be able to set up our particular space in Confluence to only connect to certain sets of projects. And that's what we can do. We can also, in our space definition here, take a look and define which projects I want to associate to. So as the owner of this application, you can talk about which repositories, we call those friends, that you might be connected to. But once we actually have those relationships, I can go ahead and pick maybe my DNG. I can pick, obviously that's requirements management. I can pick another project that I might want to say I want to have it related to this. And I can add that relationship in there. That will now allow me as a user, when I'm creating a page, to create links to that new project. So that gives me a way to be able to kind of constrain the way relationships are created, and gives an opportunity for us to be able to build around Confluence on what projects this space is related to and what information it has access to. The other question that we often get is about security and permissions. It's one of the reasons why we like OSLC so much, is because it forces us to have authenticated access to artifacts. And so just as a quick overview of what you'd experience when you first come to a page, I'm going to actually go to a different browser and we're going to reload this page because obviously we just made edits. And I'll show you what a new user would typically see. So a new user coming into Confluence would see these artifacts, but you'll see that they just have the title of the artifact, no additional link information. You'll see on these just link elements, we'll get a login option, as well as we do on those large previews. The reason why we do that is because we always need to be authenticated to that foreign repository, and we're always authenticated under our own user ID, so all the audit rules still apply. It's a great way to be able to manage the permission model. The permission model is managed in your engineering tools, and then Confluence simply adds access only when you as a user have access. So if I go to be able to log in to see this element, I can go ahead and pick my login dialog to be able to access that. Once I log in, then you're going to see that I get these dynamic updates of elements, and I can see those artifacts. And the same thing goes for my engineering test manager. It's stored my ELM login, so there we go, we are logged into that. Same goes true for actually the EWM artifacts as well. We always want to make sure that we're authenticated and logged into that. And you'll see that when I go ahead to log into Jira, the same type of activity takes place. I get a prompt from Jira that I want to be able to log in, and once I log in, then I have access to those artifacts itself within Jira, and can navigate over to those artifacts. So I think it gives a good sense in terms of we balance between accessibility of elements and being able to be always secure and make sure that we don't allow people that don't have permissions to see those engineering artifacts to see them prematurely. So it balances the needs of the IT team, the security teams, and the engineering teams. So thanks for taking some time to look at what we're doing with our OSLC Connect for Confluence. Appreciate you taking time in your day to do so.